everyone. We go on. Oh, I can type this up. We go on with our special soft skills training, and it's my great pleasure to welcome here. I think first time in this university, is it? Second time, Tundi, and she is from Budapest and Corvinus University, a partner, supervisor, and she is, if you want, the most complete of us. I'm a lawyer, nothing more. Well, I can cook, but academically, I'm a lawyer, and that's full stop. And with Tunde, there is no full stop, there is end. And so she's really perfectly placed to introduce you to interdisciplinary research. As you have already understood from yesterday, interdisciplinarity is really the name of the game, and it's not a game here. So thank you for having joined us, and the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Tátrai. Yes, and I'm an economist and lawyer, and that's why I'm very happy to talk about the interdisciplinary aspects of our everyday work, and of course of your everyday works in the next couple of years. So first of all, I created just one moment. Okay. A presentation about it, but I'm very happy to answer your questions. So please ask me if you have any doubts or you want to get more information. Of course, I'm very happy to support you. I belong officially to ESR 2, 8, and 10, but of course, I'm very happy to help anybody among the ESRs. So first of all, the message, one of the main messages of my presentation is that be alienated from legal concepts and the economic concept. Why? Because if you have a topic related to sustainability or related to ethical issues, and you'll find, for example, a small and medium-sized enterprises aspect. First of all, I have to define what an SME means in the EU or in Japan or in China or in the US. An SME, a kind of threshold of employed people, of SMEs in China, 1,000 people, in the US, 500, but in the EU, 250. So if you do not make it clear what you are talking about and you don't know the regulatory background, then of course your comparative study will be, well, let's say not perfect because of the differences. But of course, you have to collect a lot of information and coordinate the information coming from different countries. So you have to be a good lawyer from the legal point of view, to be familiar with the legal aspects, and you have to understand the characteristics of an SME coming from Arab countries or from the US. I'll come back later to this part of my presentation. Of course, there are a lot of studies, which studies were created with the help of several engineers, IT experts, lawyers, economists. May I give you some examples? The first is a national example coming from Finland. This is a guideline, a very interesting and a pretty fresh guideline about efficiency and effectiveness of public procurement. It seems that there are a lot of countries where experts work together and try to coordinate and share their knowledge. and they somehow put it into their guidelines, in a practical guidelines, in order to help the market players, contracting authorities, bidders, and of course, sometimes European regulators, because Finland is a kind of benchmark, and a lot of Northern European countries are benchmarks for us, for example, from the transparency point of view. Or let's have a look at existing indexes. One of the well-known indexes, the Transparency's a corruption perception index. Why is it interesting? It's interesting because we use it in a lot of studies, and we know that it shows just the perception of corruption. But if you want to compare different countries, it could be a good basis. If you want to compare different countries' trends, that's a real good, let's say, first choice. But not the best, but the first. But before choosing a kind of index, like a transparency index, you should be familiar with the methodology behind the index. And that's why these indexes developed by international organizations and widely accepted indexes are very well known and really good, because it's easy to understand, easy to use, easy to compare. But first you have to understand the methodology, and then you have to understand how to use it. So in this way, what I'm talking about is not just being a lawyer, an economist, and an IT, and a guy and an engineer, and so on. No, you have to be familiar with different kinds of aspects of your research. Of course, you have to improve your capabilities, because sometimes you feel that, come on, well, this is the statistical part of it. It's, well, this is not my strength, but it's not a problem. But you have to focus then more on this part, especially if you want to use indexes. So don't use it just for fun, because it's an easy solution. But it's very good to have, because finally it shows something which is widely accepted, as I have already mentioned. Or let's continue with two studies financed by the European Commission. I think most of these studies are very well. We have several additional other studies, but I cherry-picked those two, because if you have a look at the topic of these studies, first is about cost and effectiveness. The second is about a measurement tool to estimate the cost of corruption. A lot of regulators, lawyers, engineers, and economists were working on these studies. They were counting a lot, made multivariate statistics, and they did it. Although I do not agree with the second study about the measurement methodology of the cost of corruption, but it's a very good basis, and it shows you that even the guidelines shows the interdisciplinary aspects, and I think that's why we simply have to read them. They are interesting enough to understand and to know them. Let's continue with the indicators. I've already mentioned one of the indexes, well-known indexes, for example, the Transparency International's index. Let's have a look at the official public procurement scoreboards indexes of the European Commission. There are several indicators in the single market scoreboard based on the same methodology, which methodology is not perfect, but it is existing, and based on the tenders electronic daily. Above the EU threshold, you can find all the data, all the information regarding all the EU member states in one file, and you can use it. And if depending on your interest, you'll be able to count a lot, to measure, and to use these statistics. But first of all, when you want to do something with these databases, for example, like the tenders electronic dailies database, you should know the data and the content of the data. You have to be familiar with the templates, the official public procurement publication notices, and you have to understand that these databases are not perfect. There are a lot of missing information and a lot of problems. First, we have to clean the database. But we have data officially reported from these databases. You can use, of course, this data. For example, these indexes. There are thresholds. These thresholds are based on the, let's say, on the experience of the European Commission's public procurement experts. These thresholds are not perfect, but thresholds, and it's very interesting, and they have very interesting messages. May I show you one of them? This is a single bidder problem. If you deal with transparency issues, sustainability issues, circular procurement issues, you have to deal with competition from a certain point of view. And if you want to understand the characteristics of competition in public procurement, then it's an easy solution to use these indexes and to show that, come on, yes, it belongs somehow to the competition, to the level of competition of the public procurement market. But how? Based on this single bidder index, we can say that especially in the Central Eastern European countries and in some Southern European countries, the proportionality is to have just one bid, not one winning bid, not one valid bid, but simple just one bid in a public procurement procedure is very high. In Bulgaria, in Romania, in Hungary, in between 30–40%. But if you continue your work and you do not just use this single bid indicator and you count a mean, a median, not an average number of bidders, but because if you have an average number of bidders then everything is okay. The average number of bidders in most of the member states is, I don't know, 8, 18, 20, depending on the methodology, because there is no methodology behind it. We have methodology for the single bidder indicator. So if you continue your work and choose and develop additional indicators, then give somehow a kind of explanation how to do it, how to use it. For example, if you decide to deal with the most typical number of bidders, which is in several member states 1 or 2, it means that there is no competition. So please continue the work. This is a good basis. The database is not perfect, but we have just above the EU threshold all the information. Within those 4 years, we are going to have the European data space, which means that the European Commission right now is working on putting all the public procurement data into one database, above and below the EU threshold. But right now it is happening, but well, I'm not very optimistic. Hopefully we're going to have these data by the next couple of years. But we already had a DGVIS project when we realized, with the help of the Cambridge University's researchers, that it's very not easy to put these statistics and these data into one database. So it means that we have a lot of things, but you have to familiar with the content of the data. You have to increase the level of quality of your database. So please deal with it, not just use it. Let's continue with legal issues. This is so typical that we use terms in public procurement. A selection criteria and awarding criteria and exclusion ground and, you know, the contract modification rules, but you have to read the regulation. First of all, let's talk about the European, but of course you do not have to focus just on the EU issues if you want to make comparative study. Hopefully you will use a lot of international literature, but let's right now focus on the European legislation. If you have a look at the European directive, you can see the difference in between the selection and the awarding criteria and use it in a proper way. The selection criteria, let's say it's a minimum requirement. If you jump it, if you reach it, even with the help of a capacity organization, which is a kind of help for the bidder in order to reach the selection criteria, the level of selection criteria, that's fine. Then it's going to be a valid bid, hopefully. But the awarding criteria is about the evaluation method, how to give points, how to give weights, and you will get, almost all the information in the notices depending on the country. In Austria, you will not find. But in Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, or in France, you will find, depending on the culture and depending on the system and the activity of contracting authorities. I think it's crucial and pretty easy to find the definitions of relevant terms when we are talking about the European legislation and use it in this way. But if you go to the US, for example, we are talking right now about public procurement. But if you go to the George Washington University, and of course we'll have presenters from George Washington University, and we have partners from there, they might more talk about the government law program, government law, and government procurement. And when we cover not just contracting authorities spending directly public money, but we cover utilities having some kind of exclusive rights, it means that our public procurement in the EU covers more buyers than in the US. And they don't understand why to follow the public procurement regulation for utility owned by private owners. So first of all, when you make comparative study, then you understand these kind of regulatory issues behind the terms. We have a lot of European Court of Justice's decisions. Oh, come on, it's so far from me, you can say. But if you want to deal with green issues, you have to understand the Concordia bus case, the Winstrom case, the Max Havelaar case, because all of these cases have some kind of messages. The Concordia bus case is, let's say, message is that you have to find, you as a contracting authority, have to find connection in between the subject matter and the awarding criteria. So if there is no direct contact, neither indirect connection, then you cannot choose it as a buyer. And of course, this is just after the Concordia case, it appeared in the European legislation. But if you have a look at the Winstrom case, and you're coming from the eastern side of Europe, then you have to face with the very important messages of the audit offices of the EU. For example, they every time citate the Winstrom case. Why? Because they say that if you have an awarding criteria like employing unemployment people, or using renewable energy, do you accept or not? Yes, no. Then the awarding criteria will be just a promise. Oh yes, of course I will employ unemployment people. A social aspect, great. Yes, I will offer energy from renewable sources. Yes or no answer. This is a promise. And the message of the Winstrom case is that please take into consideration that it should be part of the contract. So find a connection in between the contract and the awarding criteria. There is nothing in the directives. So without this kind of, let's say, practical knowledge, because if you have a look at the European Court of Justice's decisions, sometimes it's really practical. You can understand it. It really gives added value. So please try to search them. It's really easy to find, except of the very old version. Then you will find the 95% of it in English. Yes. We have an additional term called exclusion ground. What does it mean, exclusion ground? Okay, then I will exclude if, for example, economic operator were involved in cartels. It's good. It belongs to the competition question. So if you deal with a part of it, you have to take into consideration. But if I exclude most of the for example, taxi services in Budapest, because of a cartel case, we cannot invite anybody because almost all the economic operators are excluded because of a huge cartel case. But we have several additional very interesting stories about similar issues. And what can we do? Then we have an answer for this, a self-cleaning answer. So if you just read the directives, you cannot find even a word of self-cleaning, but you'll find as part of the awarding criterion option to give the member states an opportunity or a kind of obligation, but depending on the member state's decision, it could be organized in different ways, to self-clean the bad guys and let them back to the market in order to increase the level of competition. Well, hopefully. So personally, I don't agree with it, but this is part of the story. So first you read, and then you will read, you have a chance to read a lot of critics regarding these solutions. And a last word about terms. Read non-public procurement literature. We have very, very rich procurement, purchasing related literature, supply chain management related literature. But they are not talking about contracting authorities, contracting entities, economic operators, or body governed by public law. They talk about buyers. They use different terms. So we have to find a connection in between the different terms. But if you check on the Schemago, the level of journals related to public procurement, you will find that the age index is quite low regarding almost all of the only public procurement related reviews and journals, which means that this is really a new, let's say, scientific field. A great opportunity to make research is a really good opportunity, but you have to open the door for those journals which age indexes are higher, and you can get a lot of impressions from the procurement researches, and you can use them. This whole slide is just about the different terms, but of course I will continue the story with the different literatures, but I'd like to call your attention just again for the importance of the different terms. What I did is right now is I use the European legislation terms, but when we have buyers all in all, and as a European public procurement researcher, I use contracting entity, including utilities and contracting authorities, which are not utilities and they spend public money directly. It's not widely used. I have to say that you'll find this word just once or two times in the directive. So even the terms are not perfect in public procurement. So I simply just want to say that, please, when you use something, just please get familiar with the exact content of these terms. We made several very interesting researches in the last couple of years in order to define the different new trends like the circular public procurement. But first, what we had to do is to find the related legal terms, definitions, activities, procedures coming from the directives, and then identifying the most important aspects, how to include green and social elements into public procurement. So first, what are we going to research? Let's have a look at what a preliminary market consultation is. The preliminary market consultation is about an option to communicate, to let the communication in between economic operators, the potential bidders, and the contracting authorities, the buyers. Based on the current directives, 2014 directives, they have a chance to communicate. Based on the previous directives, there was no chance. It was a hidden part. So the first sign of the public procurement procedure was to publish a notice. But of course, the market players communicate with each other beforehand. So the preliminary market consultation is about an official communication, not an informal, but an official communication in between the stakeholders about the future public procurement. Last but not least, you should be very innovative. You have an existing knowledge. You have to read a lot. For coming papers and studies and books coming from different kinds of resources. You'll find a lot of things and a lot of innovative topics. Let's say, for example, innovation partnership. Great. First of all, you sign a partnership and agreement with the economic operators, and then you start a competition. But in reality, it doesn't work. So in paper, in the regulation, it looks quite okay. But if you have a look at the case studies, we do not really have high-level researches about innovation partnership, and I hope that the innovative procurement belong to most of your topics. Then you will find that, come on, this is a new procedure, a new way of thinking. If the contracting authority is innovative enough, and contracting authority has a lot of time and expertise, then they sit down, hopefully with more than one economic operator. This is not about preliminary market consultation. This is more. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the methods. Let's talk about the aim of my procurement procedure. And let's talk about the financial background. Is it about an IT solution, or is it about zero emission kindergarten? Anything. There are several case studies. Then you have to understand that, yes, it's good in a certain situation, but sometimes it is not working. So don't use it as oh, come on, this is innovation partnership, this is positive, nothing else. It seems that we are very innovative. Be critical, because we do not have enough existing knowledge. Do not accept everything. Continue your work, be innovative, and let's be brave to have innovative ideas, but check it first. Okay, I have very good ideas. Great. I've asked several experts, especially economists, and all of them told that this innovation partnership is great, but it is not really working in reality. So being brave is not enough for being a good researcher. So first of all, check all these data, all these information, and try to collect as many information as you can. And that's why I would suggest, last but not least, to focus more on public procurement related issues, not just public procurement issues. We have several European procurement public-private partnership law review, Journal of Public Procurement, Purchasing Supply Chain Management, Journal of Procurement Management. But we have several additional journals which does not look like procurement-related issues, but they have it. For example, I would suggest the Journal of Cleaner Production. You will find a lot of very interesting papers and articles, research papers. And if you go to a conference, just check the names, and you will find a lot of very well-known names. Read their abstracts. Go to those researchers, because we almost all of us know each other. And if you wanna find connection, ask your supervisor, ask us, ask in the SAPIENS network, and definitely will find the guy you wanna communicate with. So be brave, and first of all, try to get as many information as you can, and be very, very open-minded. And this is the really interdisciplinarity of our work. So good luck for it. And if you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer. Thank you.
That's beautiful. That's how interdisciplinarity is not just a word that we put in projects to get the money. It's something that you can do, not me, but you can do and you are expected to do, and will make your research much more relevant. Questions? What is happening this morning? Oh, thank you, Mark. Yeah. No, you don't. What should I? Questions? Okay.
Yes.
No, sorry. For our online participants, I will just try to make it clear if someone lost it. When did the spark of another discipline lighted on, when you found out to be very amphibian and open to different languages, and what you need to do to learn to be both a lawyer and an economist? How do you start? It's too late for me, but it's the right time for them, I guess. Please.
Thank you very much for the question. May I share a story with you? It's not an interesting story, but for me, that was really heartbreaking. I was writing about contract modification. I'm as an economist. I thought that this is the solution. Come on, why not to change the content of the contract? Well, we need more time. And, I don't know, 15 years ago, I wrote, a paper about it. I was very brave without any kind of knowledge. And I went to, it was a workshop. And I went there, presented, and I got a question that it's fine, but is there a connection in between the level of competition and the contract modification? Yes, why not? I simply, well, I understood the question, but the link was missing. But after so many years, I think it was 20 years ago, 15, but within the 2 decades, when I read several European Court of Justice's cases, I realized, and if I have a look at the new contract modification regulation of our European directives, it made it clear that there is a direct connection in between contract modification and the and competition. Because if I let changing the contract, then what would happen if at the beginning all the economic operators knew it? It's of course it's obvious right now, but if you're a beginner, and then you have just light ideas how to do it. So at that point, it was not an easy moment of my life. I realized that, come on, I simply didn't trade a lot of things. I mean, it's obvious that, of course, there is a connection. So then I started to read a bit more. So when I think I have a really, really good starting point, it's very good, but read the critics as well. Read several papers from the ResearchGate, because sometimes researchers upload the first version of their paper, which is sometimes more critical than the final one. And try to find those people who have blogs, who just communicate about issues, do not believe in it and do not accept everything, but You have to know the different aspects and the background of the topic you're working on. So yes, it's not easy, and it's not enough to be brave. But at that point, I've realized that I have to be familiar with terms and the critics and other researchers' opinions. So this is what I would suggest. And I'm sorry, and one last message. You do not have to be a lawyer and economist and IT guy together. You don't have to be. But if you work on a topic, then it's a must for you to know everything about that topic, even the critics and even those ideas which you do not agree with.
Yeah, and that is really a precious point. Thank you, Tunde. And this reminded me of a chat I was having with Boyana a few days ago. Being a lawyer or just a lawyer is fine, but with limits. At times when I teach, I feel it is like theology. You must believe it. In practice, it's different. But of course, if you start looking at the social sciences, looking at economics, you see how it is in practice, and you start thinking how to bridge the differences or criticize the normative approach or the practical. We have one question, please, Chiara.
Good morning. Thank you for your presentation. I was wondering about the information processing, because we will have to read a lot and get a lot of information, as much as we can. And then I would like to have maybe some practical advices to build the right conceptual categories, and maybe also learn how to pose the right questions.
Yeah. That's yes. Well, may I share with you an experience of mine? I belong to the International Research Study on Public Procurement, and 12 or 15 years ago, we had a meeting, and the big professors started to fill in an Excel table. And first I didn't understand. And after, in every 2 years, we organized this International Research Study on Public Procurement. And on the 6th and 7th, I belonged to this project as an organizer. And then I understood that even the big names try to collect information in a structured way. So the first is, I know this is an easy answer, but believe me, a good message. Let's have an Excel table and write down what you're reading about, and try then to find the connection, and then you can finally simplify your Excel table, and you can make and create a group of different journals, different aspects, and it helped you to understand the different characteristics of the same questions. So let's start with a simple Excel table and process the information, try to make a summary. But right now we are working on with DBI is that Gyöngyi, my colleague, cherry-picked 30 papers, the gender smart procurement related papers. And we asked DBI to write a short summary about it. Of course, we read the papers too. And then we start with certain issues. We know more or less the issues, but not 100% satisfied. And we amend or issues or main topics. But if you're familiar with the topic, it's fine. But if you're a beginner, and let's start with the next table, please. And you will understand why I'm talking about it when trying to help you how to process information. Thank you very much.
Thanks. We have, please, last question. For the next session, gender equality. Finally, also boys are asking. Please.
Excellent. Thank you, Professor, for your presentation. My name is Felipe. My question is about the following. We surely start our researching things, we start to be innovative, to create knowledge, but we are talking about an applied social science. What should be in this interdisciplinarity environment? What should be our role in translating what we are creating, this knowledge, to the civil servants, to the practicants of the public procurement itself? How we should be ready to behave in this, what is this limit between the academy and the public organizations, etc. It's also not so easy question. Maybe.
No, no, come on, hopefully I will survive this presentation. Don't ask more. That's extremely problematic. I work in the public procurement as a practitioner. I fill in notices. I communicate with economic operators. I fight with them. I negotiate and do a lot of things, but not for money, believe me, but just for the feeling that I absolutely know what I'm talking about. I was involved in several debates and remedies and litigation procedures and wrote a lot of papers about it. And I think I understand public procurement experts, but it's a very sensitive part of our work because we have to keep the distance. Because if you meet practitioners, come on, this market is 100% corrupt, and no, I cannot even find a place for myself, and no, the prices are extremely low. But come on, last time you were the winner. Oh yes, but that was different. That's a different story. Then I had a good connection with the contracting authority. What can you say? So. When you try to make good interviews, you have to find the right interview partner, and you have to cherry pick, and sometimes to get rid of the non-relevant information. It's very easy to say that, come on, this is corrupt, and it's unethical, and the regulation is overcomplicated. But if you ask experts, they need more regulation, especially in Germany and in the eastern side of Europe, because they love it. In the Balkan states, their main problem is not sustainability. You cannot say that, come on, they have no clue about sustainability, low level of quality. No, their main problem is the unethical behavior of market players. They have no place, no time to deal with innovative ideas. So dig a bit deeper and try to keep the distance. It's great to have good practitioners, and you need them, especially the leaders of a central purchasing body, for example, or big utilities. That's great if you have a chance to meet them. And of course, if you want to meet anybody, we can organize it, I'm sure. Then just try to be as well, let's say, as researcher as you can. You don't have to be a practitioner, but you have to understand them. That's why you have to be familiar with terms. But because if you ask us, an easy question that selection criteria, could you please repeat it? Then they will immediately know that, come on, she's not a researcher. She's far from us. She's a researcher. But if you say that it's okay, yes, I understand, please continue, then they'll feel that you are in between. But you don't have to be a practitioner. Immediately they will talk about their everyday issues and the Article 52 and what's the problem with it. Please try to, to be on a, let's say, a little bit of a higher level. And in this way, you'll be able to channel the information easier.
So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very much. Okay. And it is my